You've been tracking labor stats on your X feed for a while, and a couple I picked up on this morning. 2024 hiring is at its lowest since 2015. The trend of hiring in 2024 hasn't been this low since 2015. In March of 2025, we saw near record layoffs. I'm curious about like the trigger points that you see. You talked about the triumvirate of bubbles, and we discussed this before: credit, housing, equities. Where do you see the near-term fracture line that would trigger some kind of an event? I mean, some of your calls, 40% correction in housing, 40% correction in broad equities, if I got those numbers right. What's the straw, Michael, that you're watching right now?
Well, the straw is going to be, as it always is a fracturing of the credit market. The credit market is going to freeze. What we saw in let's go back to April 2nd. In April 2nd, Trump announced his Liberation Day level of tariffs. And what happened was that the S&P 500 dropped 15% in just a handful of trading days. And the credit markets began to freeze. And the reason why they froze, and let me just be very clear that normally when credit markets freeze, Treasury prices climb and yields drop because people seek the safety of treasuries. But this time around, what I spoke about before happened, where the treasury yields spiked along with falling stocks and a dropping dollar. That's not usually what happens. And this is what I believe was happening, is that the level of tariffs were so onerous that it gave the impression that international trade would cease, which is most likely would have been the case. So if our creditor nations didn't have the dollars, the excess dollars to recirculate into our treasury market, then we would have less buyers for sovereign debt. And all that meant was that, hey, if I'm a hedge fund that's leveraged 100 to 1 on borrowing money to pick up tiny little basis points on treasuries, I had to sell that because it was, I had to unwind. The bank told me unwind that trade quickly. Mm-hmm. So it caused a complete chaos in the treasury complex.